Let us welcome the panelists onto the stage now. Frank O'Connor. So we'll have all the panelists come up. I will start the introductions as they get seated. So Frank O'Connor, you guys obviously know, needs very little introduction. He is our franchise creative director at 343. He is my oftentimes partner in crime, which I am very lucky to have. He is the creator of Mr. Chief. He abducted a young cartoon character at the age of 6, conscripted him into his dark Spartan program, and he is sort of the godfather of Halo. So welcome to Frank. Super excited to introduce Erica Soto. She is completely raising our cultural game up here on the panel. First to know about Erica is she is new to the Halo family. We are introducing a brand new AI named Isabel, and Erica is bringing her to life. Erica is a... Yes. Erica's an acclaimed theater actress. You can see her in a couple weeks at Shakespeare in the Park in LA, hence the raising of our cultural bar here.
Significantly.
But I'm excited for you guys to get to know her because she's awesome. Mr. Dan Ayub, he is the studio head for strategy games at 343 and essentially the head honcho of Halo Wars 2.
And I should point out, taking the bar back down after Erica.
Dan is appearing in Coors Light in the park. Next
Come
week.
check it out. I've been working on this for a while.
We have Mr. Dave Wilson, creative director at Blur Studio. So Dave is the director for all of the Halo Wars 2 cinematics and integral part of the Halo Wars 2 storytelling. And was the VFX supervisor on Halo Wars 1 and the cinematics with Halo Wars 1. So he provides, beyond immense skill and talent, some continuity across story that's exciting for us to have. And then last but not least, Mr. Kevin Grace.
Woo!
Kevin is the narrative design director for Halo Wars 2. He is the story maestro. And we get to hear a lot about Halo Wars 2 story from Kevin today. So thank you. I'm Kiki Wolfkill. I'm here to try and keep these guys in line, which I've been unsuccessful with in the past, but we'll give it a go. So to kick off, we're going to show you a little bit of a compilation of some of the early cinematics with Halo Wars 2, just to give you a flavor of story and what you can expect from a visual perspective. And then we will dive right into Halo Wars 2 story. So why don't we roll that first video?
Captain, wake up. Something has happened.
Professor. Let's see what kind of galaxy we woke up to.
So we wouldn't be here talking about Halo Wars 2 were it not, of course, for the original Halo Wars. It was one of the first really successful console RTSs. We released it in 2009, and I think for all of us, it has sort of a special place in our hearts from a Halo story perspective. So before we talk a little bit about Halo Wars story, I did want to give a shout out to Mr. Graham Devine, who was kind enough to join us today. So Graham was the lead designer on Halo Wars and very much responsible for the Halo Wars 1 story. So certainly we wouldn't be here having this conversation were it not for Graham helping craft the original story back in 2009. So thank you, Graham. So, you know, it's been 7 years since we told the Halo Wars story. While, of course, we don't need to understand the Halo Wars story to enjoy the Halo Wars 2 story, maybe, Kevin, you could start off with giving us a little bit of a refresher on what happened in Halo Wars.
Okay, so with apologies for summing up an entire game in about 30 seconds. Short version is Captain Cutter, the fellow you saw at the end of that video, and his crew on board the Spirit of Fire, UNSC logistics and supply ship, chased a Covenant prophet in his plot across the galaxy and into a foreigner shield world. They eventually stopped the Covenant from taking control of a massive fleet that probably would have ended the war then and there. But in doing so, they had to sacrifice some of the crew and their own slipspace engine to just blow everything up. So at the end of the first game, the Spirit of Fire and her crew are adrift, lost in space. They all go into cryosleep, frankly, with probably not much of an expectation of ever getting home.
So, Erica, since you're new
Yeah.
to Halo, I'd love to start with you. Sorry to put you on the spot right off. But I'd love to start with you and kind of get your impressions of the story and your introduction to Halo Wars.
Well, I had, of course, heard of Halo before, and I hadn't actually played it before, learning about this project. So I had to do a lot of research. But I always really loved fantastical stories and worlds. And so in learning about Halo and then coming into the Halo War story, I was just enthralled with the grandeur of it and sort of the epic nature of the story and the origin story and some of even biblical kind of influences that I thought was really fascinating. So I spent a lot of time watching YouTube cinematics to kind of get the whole idea together, but it was just such a big and exciting world,
Yeah.
This was Erica's first audition ever for a video game, so she's batting 1,000 and hit the first one pretty much out of the park.
So, Dave, while you're at the mic, obviously you were involved with the Halo Wars story originally as well.
Yeah.
What were some of their sort of favorite moments and things that resonated with you?
We were brought on pretty early in that process too, much like this one. I think for me, working with Graham and the folks at Ensemble and Microsoft, I think we got to design the Spirit of Fire, which was a pretty special moment for me. And then watching all the incantations of it after the game was released, I think the most special one for my partner, Heikki Antila, who worked on the show with me, someone built it out of about 10,000 Lego pieces, which I think is the absolute epitome of knowing that you've made it when someone builds something you've designed out of Lego. So, so that was it for me.
Awesome. So I think one of the things I always found super intriguing, one is it's a really sort of clear, concise story. Like, I love that you can watch all the cinematics together, and it really sort of strings together in a super cohesive storyline. I think the other thing that was always interesting for me is the fact that it took place 20 years before the events of Halo Combat Evolved. So there's a lot in there that sort of gives you some insight into sort of the path to Chief in Halo CE. Frank, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about sort of the place Halo Wars has in the Halo canon.
Yeah, I mean, Graham, I'm glad he's here because, now I'm really on the spot because anything I say is going to be granularly examined. But Halo Wars was, I was actually really excited about it. Because I loved seeing how Ensemble back in the day turned that universe into an RTS. And it was, the original design for Halo was an RTS. It morphed into a shooter when Charlie Goff, one of the programmers on Halo and now Destiny, literally just was playing with cameras and stuck a camera on a unit. And now it's like, well, this is kind of like a first-person shooter. So it has this DNA that was already built into the universe. And if you think about it, you can kind of see it. It's like, well, these units match each other. The Covenant has a ghost, and the UNSC has a mongoose. Now it would have been a warthog back in the day, and everything kind of felt balanced for an RTS. And it's not a coincidence, absolutely not. And so the story, in order to not kind of like interfere with each other, that's where the sort of time. The time difference comes in, and you get some cool history for the Halo universe. But the thing I'm really excited about in Halo Wars 2 is we're not only are we bringing it forward to sort of contemporary Halo universe for future story reasons, but it also makes that story about men and women and technology out of time. Like they've been literally frozen for 20 odd years. And so they come into a universe that is completely unrecognizable to them. And I guess the bonus there is if you're new to the series and if you're new to Halo Wars, you can kind of share that. Like, where are we? And it's all, there's lots of really nice, good, and not convenient exposition that brings you up to speed. So I'm really enjoying that gulf.
I like this segue into Halo Wars 2.
We've been to panels before.
So Dan, maybe to hear from you a little bit. So if you played on Legendary and finished the game, obviously it ends with Serena saying, Captain, wake up, something has happened. Does the Halo Wars 2 story pick up right from that moment? Does it pick up from where you think maybe the intention was when that line was written for Halo Wars? Give us a lead into the Halo Wars 2 story in the video we're about to see.
Yeah, I mean, what we really wanted to do was just create that natural connection between the two titles, right? The first Halo Wars ends effectively with the crew going to sleep. And we wanted, as you'll see in Halo Wars 2, you kind of start with, and the cinematic we just showed, or the clip, the crew kind of waking up, right? And Serena saying, wake up, something has happened. I think Frank really nailed it. What we wanted to do, obviously, was bring the crew into a more modern time, if you will. So Halo Wars 2 takes place shortly after the events of Halo 5. So we're bringing the crew into that modern timeline. But also to put yourself in the eyes of that crew of, we don't know what's going on. Just imagine, right? Just take a second and imagine you go to sleep for 28 or 30 years, and then you wake up, you open your eyes, and you're trying to acclimate yourself in this very new world that makes no sense whatsoever. And this is effectively the situation that Cutter and the crew is in. They have no idea what's going on. They have no idea the state of the UNSC. They're completely lost. And just imagine that for a second. And this is very much where we're trying to put the player when the game starts. And excuse me, so the cinematic we're about to see, so the crew is woken up, they hear some kind of mysterious beacon that someone has sent them from the Ark, and they're going down to check it out. And again, it's very much putting you as the player in that position of, we don't know what's going on, and yeah, let's kind of see what happens.
I always thought Graham wrote that line for job security.
It's a hell of a cliffhanger.
It may still pay off. We'll see. Cool. Why don't we run this video and we'll jump into some Halo Wars 2 conversation. All right.
Can I just say how awesome that? So, as you might have noted, this is the first time Eric has actually seen her character in the game.
That is so cool.
That was pretty awesome.
Also say we have two very talented actors in the audience too, who brought Atriox and some of the elites and Banished to life. TJ and Damon, you want to stand up and give a bow?
Yeah, I have to say the best part of that was watching Eric
It was
watching
awesome.
that for the first time.
I was like, oh my God! That's really cool.
Seriously, what the hell did we just see? There were Spartans getting their butts kicked. There's like brutes and elites and all living together in some unholy union. So
And happy couples, yeah.
Yeah. So Dave, I'll pick on you for a moment. Do you want to give us a little bit of context around what we just saw?
Yeah.
Or you cannot.
I think we wanted to have this sort of this setup that shook things up a little bit. For me, I've always liked, you've got these great heroes in this universe, but I've always felt, these stories are often defined by your villain, right? I love Star Wars, I love Luke Skywalker, but what always made that story great to me was with Darth Vader, your villain. And when Kevin and I were talking about, and Dan, we were discussing how we were going to set all this up. I think that was one of the things we wanted to focus on early, was creating something for these powerful, quote unquote superheroes to bump up against. We wanted to give them something, that they would fear and audiences would fear. But I think beyond that, there's even a bigger story that's intriguing, which I'm sure we'll reveal at some point, about Atriox and where he came from. But this, I think the purpose of this was to establish a lot of things, but one of the things it really did for me was establishing this new villain in this franchise, which I think is very important.
It's a hell of a good morning after 28 years of sleeping. But like Dave said, we wanted to set the stakes and set it high right at the start. Is that anybody who played the first Halo Wars game, one of the most famous cinematics from that is that scene of the 3 Spartans fighting their way down the bridge and just taking apart anything that gets in their way. And we wanted to start with that kind of an idea here, but then they run into this wall, who is Atriox, who's the leader of the Banished, and that he can do this to 3 Spartans in hand-to-hand combat. Like, that's just the high welcome to my arc. I'll deal with you in just a minute. So that's how the game starts. And for our heroes, again, you need to see, if a Spartan's not afraid of anybody, then it's still pretty cool to be a Spartan, but you never worry about that Spartan. And so we're worried about these Spartans at the end of this.
So I'm a little bit of a pragmatist, so super quick question for you, Frank, because this is really for me. What does a body go through after, 28 years of cryosleep? As we think about the returning crew of the Spirit of Fire, how do they
So cryosleep is it's a pretty invasive process. You're some of your fluids in your body are replaced, but you're basically frozen for 28 years, and that can do tremendous damage to a body. And actually, last night I shared a hotel room with Joseph Staten, and he, as it turns out, snores very loudly. And so this morning, after basically zero sleep, I felt roughly the same level of crispiness that unfrozen Spartan and fleet commanders would feel being popped out of cryosleep. So it's hard on the body, but but on a more serious note, tremendously hard on the mind. It's literally a culture shock as you emerge into this. We're familiar with the arc because of Halo 3 and a bunch of other stuff, but these guys aren't. And they only had just gotten used to Forerunner stuff, so now they're at the biggest, most important Forerunner facility in the universe, and the galaxy has changed in a way that is obviously not super friendly to Spartans.
Yeah, so we have the Spirit of Fire returning, Red Team, Cutter, Anders, Forge. Dare I ask about Serena? Do you guys want to talk a little bit about
We're not going to say. So, yeah, there's some, so Serena was the smart AI, Captain Cutter's right-hand Serena in the first game. And people who've been following the Halo games for a while know that smart AIs like Serena can only live for 7 years before they start to go a little bit AI crazy or rampant, as we call it in Halo and elsewhere. But so Serena was a few years in when the first game came through, and then they've been napping for 28 years later, and the math on that adds up challenging for Serena, but we haven't actually gone into how she deals with that situation, how Cutter deals with it. That's something that we're going to kind of have to wait and see.
Especially if Graham wrote her into existence, if she is or isn't alive, I think we'll make that decision when he's not around.
There's an interesting Forge question.
No, there wasn't.
I heard of it. Oh yeah,
the
you know
handsome
what?
Forge? He's controversial.
I'm
Bad question.
just gonna take this down for a second. So, who here played the first Halo Wars? I remember. All right, so a lot of people. Kevin, this guy, and I have a debate all the time as to whether or not Forge may have survived the end of Halo Wars 1. Kevin is just a negative guy, and he's saying there's no way a human could survive a sun-going supernova. I think there's always hope. So
He's
this is no. This is an ongoing conversation that we're gonna have to figure out.
And by conversation, he means he talks in the hallway,
Yeah,
and
we don't listen.
and usually I walk away.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's bonus time now, so I kind of feel like I like my
Well,
chances.
I'm not on your paycheck, so he's dead.
It's a great big spaceship engine, and then that blew up, and that blew up a sun inside of a giant Forerunner
Right.
shield
But he might have
thing,
survived.
and then he was floating, and so
I would like to see him.
I don't think the math
a little
adds
more
up on
Sergeant
him.
Ford.
Okay, who here
I'm
wants to
in
see
the-
Forge come back?
Yeah, at breakfast I was like, Forge, Anders, a little something. I don't know, but that's just the audience in me.
So beyond the returning characters, we have some very intriguing and new characters. We'll talk about Atriox in a little bit, but I want to spend some time talking about the lovely Isabel. So Isabel is a logistical AI, so a little bit different from what we've seen in the past with AIs in the Halo universe, which has been actually really exciting for us in terms of sort of broadening what an AI can be and getting to explore a bit of a different personality. So first off, Frank, maybe talk a little bit about a logistical AI versus what we've seen before and sort of how it relates to Isabel.
Yeah, so Isabel is a smart AI, so she has the pros and cons that brings with it, but she is not a military AI in the sense that we normally think about it, Cortana, Roland, etc. She is in charge of logistics, obviously, on the Ark, which is a big research outpost, a very important research outpost in the sort of post-collapse of the Covenant. Obviously, things have changed since they started doing their ostensibly peaceful research mission, but she was ostensibly in charge of things like food and light and power and fuel and stuff like that. So she's the closest we're going to get to a civilian in this story in the true sense of the word. And so she again ends up being kind of a cipher for the audience, and all this war stuff is kind of new to her. And she's only a couple of years old as the story commences, so she has a very slight naivete as far as danger and conflict are concerned, because she was in the only lull in the Covenant human war that there has been as far as we followed the Halo universe. So she's you guys. She's scared and she's curious, and I might say just a little bit vengeful. You'll find out in the story she has good reason to be very upset with those brutes that you saw, and she's a very human character, hence Erica.
So Erica, maybe you can tell us a little bit about sort of what you learned about the character going in, and then maybe what you brought to her through the process of bringing her to life.
Yeah, well, I remember, as I was learning about the Halo universe and then learning about Halo Wars and watching Cortana and Serena and seeing how sort of perfect and ethereal they were and sort of all-knowing. And what I loved about Isabel is that, even though she's an intelligent AI...
And you were like, that's why they picked me? Perfect and ethereal?
Perfect and ethereal in every way. She was raw. Raw and emotionally charged and passionate and, really driven by this adamant desire to protect and preserve, what she believes in and the people that she cares about, and that's something that I could really connect to, is she sort of loves really fiercely in a way, which makes her vulnerable, but also I think really powerful. And I just thought that was such a cool, such a cool twist on the AI idea, that even though they are other than human, they're still so human in that way, sort of flawed.
Yeah.
I think a little.
She's definitely, like what she has experienced, sort of she wears on her sleeve, which I think is super interesting and again, very different from what we've seen before.
Yeah.
Is there anything you guys want to add in terms of your intentions around Isabel and maybe a little bit about what her motivations are?
I think Erica sounded pretty smart right there, so I'm stupid to follow.
But he's about to do it anyway.
But since I'm stupid, here I go. I will tack on to Frank's answer earlier that just like Isabella needs to learn things about conflict from Captain Cutter and the Spirit of Fire, is that they've got a lot to learn from her as well. They like others have said, have been out of the world literally for about 28 years, and she's the only connection they now have to find out if humanity even exists, who won the war against the Covenant. And from a gameplay perspective, she's got every weapon, vehicle, base schematic the UNSC has cooked up in about the last 30 years. Along with about 30 years of Windows updates. Sorry, Captain. So there's a long sequence where we just watched this computer reboot.
They were all optional.
And then, yeah. let me get
Totally
back in.
optional updates.
Yeah, Microsoft jokes, I'm fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's as important to the crew and to Captain Cutter as they are to her. And so kind of seeing her rejoin the Spirit of Fire after her family, like Erica mentioned, was destroyed by Atriox and by the Banished. Seeing that relationship grow through the course of the game was a lot of fun to cook up, and then even more fun for me to see Dave and Erica and everybody else, Blur, who's been working on this, bring to life.
So I'm going to move us along for time. So from a delightful new AI to a fairly scary and powerful new adversary in Atriox. I'd love to hear a little bit more about Atriox from you guys. What are his motivations? He seems a little angry all the time.
He has issues.
He's not a happy fellow.
You guys want to talk a little bit about, see?
Sure.
Serious angry face.
Sure. I can kick us off. We were talking about this last night. It was kind of strange because, let's be clear, none of us know what the heck we're doing up here. And I think it was interesting. We were talking about this yesterday. We started with Atriox, right? And I don't know if that's the right thing or not. But we just really found this villain that we really liked, and wanted to create someone with a little more motivation than it seems, as will be revealed throughout the course of the game, and a really interesting genesis, right? Like the brutes, as Kevin was saying, like you see it at the beginning, right? You just see this brute taking apart these 3 Spartans, who the last time you saw them were just decimating this row of elites. And it was just like, what if you've got this one guy, this one brute, who's not only stronger than the others, but is also hyper intelligent and really, really motivated and kind of grumpy. You get a very, very interesting character. You get a very interesting villain, really, that the universe hasn't had to deal with before. And we've just been thrilled, I think, with the response to Atriox since we released him, with that little teaser at Gamescom last year. People have really been, really interested in this guy and wanting to know more. And I just think he's a really spectacular villain for us.
We also wanted his crew, the Banished, that's the army that he's put together, like a little bit to reinforce that beat of the crew, the Spirit of Fire, coming back and things aren't right. Like it's not what they used to be for them, for Halo fans as well, to come back in. And so you've got Atriox, who's a brute, and you've dealt with brutes before, and they're kind of furry guys, and they get up in your face, and if you shoot their clothes off, they get real mad. But we wanted to take something familiar there and put a different spin on it, and we've got that throughout the Banished army. We've got wraiths and banshees and ghosts, and they all operate in some similar ways, but they fight differently as well, and they definitely look differently. They look scarier. They look like a brute took it and said, how can I kill people even better with this thing? Let me find the spikes and the razors and the angles and all of that. So for fans, like we've got up on the screen there is a fellow called the Shipmaster, is an example kind of how Atriox built his force and incorporated some of those Covenant elements as well, is that this is actually an elite captain who is a mercenary, who works for Atriox literally for money. And again, that's something elites are familiar for Halo fans, but we know elites as honorable warriors. For whether or not they pick the right side with the Covenant is not really up for debate. But this guy doesn't fight for a cause. He fights for money. He fights for his crew and to keep his ship flying and his crew together. But at the same time, he's familiar. You know what elites can do. And that helps a bit when you get onto the battlefield in the game as well, is that you've got a basic understanding of the building blocks. In there, you won't feel lost if you played the first game at all. But hopefully, you'll feel surprised when the Banished come knocking.
So I think one of the other big major characters is the setting, right, is the arc. I'm messing with the PowerPoint here. All right. Twitchy fingers. So in Halo Wars, obviously a Forerunner artifact played heavily in that story. The Ark is one of the biggest and most important Forerunner artifacts in the universe. Frank, maybe you can give us a little bit of a sense of sort of the scope and scale of this place that the Spirit of Fire has sort of come upon.
Yeah, the arc. Super quick recap is it's the Halo factory, and it's first featured in Halo 3. It's where Halos are built. It's where they're deployed from if they're damaged or destroyed. But it's also a vast, almost terrestrial laboratory of sorts. It's some Covenant species have been there. Obviously, you see the interaction with the human research outpost, but there's other stuff on the arc. The arc is vast. Each of those arms or petals that you see from the sort of flower of the arc is easily larger than Earth in terms of overall surface area. So this is a fantastically large environment. And obviously, as video game designers, that's great because we can have whatever we want there. And we've got a lot of really interesting plans for the Ark in the future, not necessarily just in Halo Wars 2, but it's a fantastic setting for Halo Wars 2 because it feels familiar to Halo players because it's got some things technologically and environmentally in common with the Halo rings, not coincidentally, as you'll find out. But it's also a really genuinely mysterious place. The research lab that Erica is in charge of, they've barely scratched the surface of this place, and they don't know its mysteries, and they don't know its secrets. And Isabel, I should say. Isabel's research, and yours was pretty good too. Isabel's research is key to the story, and I can't say too much more than that, but understanding what the Ark is and how it functions is very key to the mainline plot.
Yeah. And this image is actually from the novel Hunters in the Dark. There are no armless dinosaurs in Halo
You're just
Wars
trolling
2.
T-Rexes who are having a bad
I
enough
know.
time as it. Well, now they can't
Yeah.
even have a coffee.
They're
So.
missing all sorts of things. But yeah, the Ark features in Hunters in the Dark. You encounter it in Halo 3. So it's actually been in the fiction all along. And it's, I think, really exciting for us to actually get to dive in and explore it a little bit. Kevin, you had talked about the Banished a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the super interesting things about them, and maybe you guys can talk about sort of former Covenant versus the Banished. This is a group that Atriox had started. So you'll see a lot of familiar forms from the Covenant, but they've certainly made them their own. So maybe you can...
Yeah, we wanted to, we were starting with the Banished Forces and trying to figure out what they look like. Kind of began with how would Atriox put this together, Atriox and his backstory, how he came to rise up against the Covenant, what kind of a force he put together early, and then when he kind of went big, when everything fell apart for the Covenant. And then when he had access to all of the tools and some of the soldiers that the Covenant used to control, what would he do with them? What would a brute do with a Banshee, for example? And luckily we had some great examples in the universe already, vehicles like the Chopper, weapons like the Mauler, brute shot, kind of examples, really pure examples of what brute aesthetic and brute design looks like. And we found some ways to apply those to some existing vehicles, but also some brand new ones, like just went away a second ago, because the Banished have some surprises, some weapons and some vehicles and some tactics that we've not seen in the Halo universe before. So, but all of it really was created with that brute aesthetic, because Atriox is very much in charge. We've never had a brute in charge. Tartarus a little bit, he tried hard, but we've never really had a brute in charge like this in the Halo universe before. And so we're getting to see a much better picture of what brutes can bring to a battlefield.
So I want to save a little bit of time to talk about the production process and the sort of performance process of creating these cinematics. So we have a quick little transitional video to play right now, so we can start talking a little bit more about how we made these cinematics.
And rolling. T-pose. That's a cut. Yeah.
I'm sure T-pose is something you heard a lot, Erica.
That's what I was talking about.
So Dave, I think you're in a unique position because you worked on the cinematics for Halo Wars. So tell me a little bit about, like, give me an analogy for how different was the process in 2007 for creating these than it is now?
I give good metaphors, so let's start there. And,
Read the little card.
What?
Under 18.
Yeah, I saw that. Because usually Kiki knows my metaphors are usually sexually explicit, but there's a note on here that is not going to allow me to do that. I find in that wonderful, awkward ambiguity of sexual explicit metaphors, people forget their questions and they just want to move on to something else. And then
Nice try,
as a
Dave.
director, I feel I've done my job.
Next question.
I would say, you know, when we did them back in 2007, the performances were kind of segregated in an odd way, in that technology didn't really allow us to capture everything in one setting. You kind of did your voice performance over here, you did your body motion capture over there, you did your facial animation separately, and then you kind of Frankensteined everything together. And it's tricky because, you know, it's like today you're playing your head and tomorrow you'll play your arm and someone over there will be your voice. And I think it loses a lot, it sort of stifles some of that performance. I think we did a great job and we had incredible material to work with, but there's nothing that beats sort of being on stage and setting the tone and describing to an actor what's there and letting them sort of bring a little bit of themselves to the table. I think that process of being able to do it all in one setting, allows us to do something pretty great. The technology we can use now basically allows us to capture body motion capture, facial motion capture, audio, all at the same time, and it's just wonderful. We can bring all the actors on stage and in one fell swoop sort of record a whole cinematic in once, and it's pretty special rather than having to sort of patch it all together.
So Erica, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the process, because it was your first time doing a performance capture, working with someone like Dave, which takes a little adjustment. I heard.
We're still adjusting. It's been like 7 years.
I heard he kept making you blink, like militantly.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was Thierry. That was my animation supervisor. Who has a fetish about blinking.
Yeah.
So you're acting, and Eric can tell the story.
Oh yeah. So I didn't know this. It was my first time doing any kind of performance capture, motion capture, anything like that for the first time ever. And so I'd be in this sort of really emotional place, and then he'd go, "Okay, now blink," and I'd be like, "Oh yeah. So, and I didn't realize that it's important to blink, otherwise your character starts to look a little sort of dead eyes.
Thierry likes to see you do that.
Yeah. So that was fun, but no, it was incredible. What I loved about it was that it was the perfect setting to stretch your imagination, right? Which as a performer is really kind of all you ever want to do, because you're in this essentially soundproof padded room.
Mm-hmm. I've been in one of those.
Yeah,
totally different reason.
Just sort of devoid of any stimuli in any way, shape, or form. And you have to, imagine that you're on this ship and there's a battle going on and there's, enemies here and there, and you've got, all this wonderful stuff that you're manipulating with your arms. And so it was just fun, sort of being in this room that's essentially just a white box and creating that.
It's from an actor's perspective, it's pretty daunting. You walk in there. I'll give a little backstory on Erica and Isabel. We were on the last day of casting, and we'd been casting for a while, and we were really looking for something pretty special. And I mean, the AIs in Halo are, nothing to take lightly. So we went through a process on it, and we were on the last actor on the last day, and the casting director came to me and said, "Look, I got a wild card here. She's been doing Shakespeare in the Park," which I wasn't quite sure what that was. I had sort of visions of what it might be, so I was like, all right.
It's really cool.
It is, and I say you should go and watch it. It is great. And Erica came in, and when we're doing auditions, we don't have anything, and even when we're shooting, it's a white padded room, right? And there's a picnic table and some straws on it, and a bunch of people standing around watching, and we give Erica the sides, the script, and we say, "Okay, go." The straws turned into a hologram, and the picnic table became the holo table, and the walls disappeared, and you could just see in her eyes that she could see everything that was there. And it is an incredible experience to be around that when it happens. I think, I will to this day say that I think and we've worked with a lot of actors, but theatrical, theater, a lot of people ask what mocap is, and it's really like theater in the realm, right? There's nothing there. And you're standing in black pajamas, and there's a bunch of technicians standing around drinking coffee and eating sandwiches, And you have to imagine this world that isn't there. It takes a really special actor to be able to, imagine it all there. We go, you're 2 foot tall, that tennis ball is Captain Cutter, there's a hologram in front of you, out the windows is the Ark, and it was there like that. And it was a pretty special moment.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's right. I forgot Captain Cutter was a tennis ball.
Yeah.
Like on a stick, which is great.
And our holotable prop was built by our animation supervisor, which he drives a Prius, and he built it in his garage. So it's the first foldable, compactable holotable that can fit in the back of a Prius and be transported to a mocap studio.
Yeah.
Pretty special.
And I remember that Cutter and Anders had like an Isabel that was like it looked like a paper towel roll with a smiley face on it.
It was a paper towel.
We spare no expense, really, doing this stuff.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool because it was sort of Isabel's scenes going on this half of the stage, and then Cutter and Anders scenes going on over there simultaneously.
Yeah, because obviously Isabel's smaller, so we shoot Erica separately and we shoot the rest of the crew over here. But up on the screens, they're mapped onto their characters, so you can you're sort of watching the screens and they have a sort of paper towel with a smiley face on, and they're acting to that. And Isabel's looking up at tennis balls over here, and somehow this amazing performance is what you guys see.
Yeah, I think it's extraordinary because there's just sort of the logistics of being able to act with a roll of toilet paper or whatever it was.
Paper towel.
And the tennis ball.
Tennis ball and a paper towel.
But when you guys get a chance to see a little bit more of Erica's performance, sort of seeing her deliver on sort of vulnerability and the resilience of the Isabel character, which is really nuanced. It's extraordinary to imagine acting in that situation and delivering on that kind of both emotional and nuance. So pretty incredible, I will say.
Thank you.
I would like to get to Q&A. A quick speed round for you guys. I'd love to hear from each of you, just in one sentence, what does the Halo Wars 2 story mean to you? If you could sort of sum up what the heart of the story is. Give me a sentence, and we'll maybe start with you, Kevin.
All right. I would say, when the universe goes to hell, what do you fight for?
Well, it's bleak.
Jesus, Kevin, always
and
with the
bunnies.
I'd say it's about family. I think it's a bunch of folks coming together who, spurred a fire. It's been 30 years. People have moved on. With Isabel, she's got to find her. I think it's about finding family.
She said one sentence.
Yeah, Dave totally stole mine. I think it's definitely about family. You see that with the Isabel character, and you see some other motivations on the other side as well, right? And like, who do you care about, and who do you fight for?
It's a lot of sentences.
Dude, seriously? I'm gonna.
Yeah, along the same lines, against all odds, protecting what you believe in fiercely,
That was one sentence. See, Erica, can do it. We suck, Dave.
Yeah.
She's really good at this.
Thanks a lot.
I worked really hard on that answer, actually.
All of that, but also about what do brave and intelligent people on both sides do when they're faced with the unexpected, and how do they adapt?
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for the time and energy today. We have a couple housekeeping things after a Q&A, one of which is a little bit of a giveaway. So why don't we take some questions for a few minutes, and then we'll go to the giveaway. Any questions out there? Oh. Yeah. Oh, there's a Spartan out there. Oh, yeah.
All right, so I noticed in the beta there were other commanders that were unlockable. Will they have special units like in the original Halo Wars?
Great question. So for those of you who had a chance to play the beta, you saw a couple of them. There will absolutely be more leaders than that, and they will absolutely have different abilities.
Thank you.
And we'll have some more coming post-launch as well.
So Blur puts together really great cutscenes like this and like Halo 2 Anniversary. Do you guys ever have plans to maybe have them adapt a larger story like some Halo Evolution?
Yeah, you guys should start a petition and send it to Kiki and Dan and everyone.
This is their business development manager.
Dave keeps saying no.
Perhaps. We think about it.
We think about it.
Sometimes we talk about it.
You'll have our money.
Hi, so Halo Wars being an Xbox game and now coming to Xbox One, but it's also coming to the PC as well.
Windows 10.
Windows 10, yes. But I was wondering how it works changing from a game that was built around a controller, like especially bringing it to a keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, right? I mean, the first Halo Wars, I think, did the best job of any game, I think to this date, quite frankly, of making RTS work on a console controller. So when you look at how you transplant that to PC, we want to make sure we're being very mindful of that audience because I mean I'm a hardcore RTS player on PC, and I know there are a lot of expectations. So really, when that transition happens, so imagine you're playing it on PC, pretty much everything you'd expect to be able to do in an RTS is going to work. So you're going to have multiple grouping units that you can do. You can quickly navigate the map. You can click through the mini-map and hyperspeed to any point on it as well. We wanted to make sure the controls felt really native on that platform with a mouse and with a keyboard. And great call out to our developer, Creative Assembly. They've been making RTS games on PC like for 2 decades, and they've been a great partner to work with and really making sure that experience feels incredibly native on the PC. So if you haven't had a chance to do it, we will be. We had a beta around the E3 timeframe on console. We will have a PC beta coming a little bit closer to launch, so you'll get a chance to check out those controls.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, my question is, are we going to see any connections or reference to the flood that's maybe remaining on the Ark?
That would be interesting.
Would.
That is an awesome question.
Thank you. I tried.
I'm sorry you had to wait in line for that weak answer. That was...
I was wondering if there's any chance we'll see a Forerunner faction to be played as in the multiplayer.
Cheers. Well, obviously, anybody who's up to date with Halo 5 knows that the Forerunners are in the mix. And since the story of Halo Wars 2 does take place, it's a modern-day Halo story. Like, it's taking place at the same time as all the events with Chief and Cortana and what she's doing. So the Forerunners / Prometheans / Cortana's forces are very much a going concern in our universe. And then I'm going to end with a weak answer like the last one and say,
full of weak answers.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. So more to talk about that later.
So yeah, let me add on to it this way. We definitely, we've got the races planned out for a while to go. You can probably squint and see a world where you can play as other people coming down the line.
All right. Hi, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of your work, and I'm just curious about the Banished campaign. So like, how does it relate to like, the other Covenant Splinter Forces, and like, how does Aatrox fit into the campaign as well, if you could play as him or use him there?
Well, we can go a little bit into that, but the simplest version is that Aatrox doesn't fit into the other existing Covenant factions that we've seen elsewhere, like in Halo 5, for example. He's running his own crew. He is very much designed or focused on the Banished and their success, his success, and building up his power over in our Halo Wars part of the galaxy on the Ark. So he's not part of that political system right now, but he has some interesting plans in that direction.
Oh no, sorry, I meant like gameplay-wise. Like, can you actually use his abilities?
Yes. Okay, so in the original, the base game that's coming out, we'll be playing on the side of the UNSC, focusing on Captain Cutter and Isabel and Anders and everything they're going through, other characters as well. But in multiplayer, you will be able to jump in as Aatrox and as some of those other leaders that Dan mentioned a little bit ago. So you'll be able to play them as in multiplayer right away, and then we've got some more plans to spend more time with Aatrox in the future.
All right, thanks.
So I think we have time for one more question. It can be a run-on sentence. Try and squeeze 2 in. It's fine. We have time for one more person.
Nobody follows the rules.
Hi. For Halo Wars 2, at the end of Halo 5, when all the AIs band together, will that tie into Halo Wars 2 at all, or no?
So Halo Wars 2 takes place in that time frame. The reasoning being we wanted to sort of tie the two timelines of the universe together. So nothing super specific to say about the future, but that is certainly an interesting possibility, and obviously something that we've thought a great deal about as we sort of tie those timelines together.
Thank you. Love Halo Wars.
Thank you.
All right, okay, super quick question.
There are 3 questions, but they're really simple.
Wait.
Yes or no?
Good man.
Yes
Get
or
in
no?
there.
Oh, okay. Okay. How many years has the game been in development? Did y'all know right away after part 1 y'all are gonna make a part 2? And was it easier than going into making part 2?
There's a lot of parts to that. Yeah, so I mean, to answer, I guess, your first question, at this point, I think we're probably about 2.5 years in. That's about when we started to have those conversations with Creative Assembly on, and getting on board and doing it. And I've already lost your second question, which is probably a good thing since we probably only had time for the one. But yeah,
Did we always know we were going to make a second one?
I know I was intentional.
I think Graham did.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Chop, chop.
I mean, I think there was always chop chop. I think there was always an intention for it to continue. Again, right? We that door was left open with the first one. We were really diligent that we didn't want to do another one until we found the right partner. Right? RTS is a very complicated style of game to make. And the genre's changed a lot too, right? The genre's changed incredibly in the last 7 to 8 years, and we really wanted to make sure we had a strong, brilliant partner that could really do justice to that first game. And Creative Assembly, again, as I said earlier, just has a phenomenal pedigree, probably the best RTS developer on the planet right now. And it's just been a great partnership, right? Between them, 343, Blur, just bringing all of this together.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be a Halo panel if somebody didn't ask if there's going to be multiplayer in Halo Wars 2. So, Dan, will there be multiplayer in Halo Wars 2? This is a Halo tradition, by the way, at panels.
Yes, there will absolutely be multiplayer. We have a number of modes, in fact, planned for Halo Wars 2. So, you saw just a taste during the beta. We have a number of other modes planned as well that we're really excited to show you guys.
All right. So thank you, guys. A couple housekeeping things. Pay our corporate masters. So Halo Wars 2, reminder, it releases on February 21st, 2017 on both Xbox One and Windows 10. Halo 5, we released the Warzone Firefight update or release, which has been great. More to come, perhaps not at that large a scale, because that was a huge release for us.
But a few surprises. Yeah.
But a few surprises coming up. And then, of course, the Halo 5 Forge free PC Windows 10 release. If you are a forger or have ever thought about being a forger, it's a pretty incredible set of tools, and there's been a lot of work going into that. So we're excited to see all of the amazing maps and modes come out of that.
And you can test your maps in custom games at 4K resolution, 60 frames a second.
He did that himself, like
I coded
made it,
yeah.
Our Halo Championship Series Pro League finals are coming up next weekend. We'll be at KCON. The European finals are happening right now. So tune in to twitch.tv Halo to watch those. This has been our first Pro League season, and it's been great. We're super excited. We'll all be down in LA for that next week. Feel free to show up. Our giveaway. We have a Halo Legendary Crate to give away today, a full year subscription. We're really excited about the crate. If you aren't the lucky winner today, we are doing signups until August 15th. But we have picked seat 117 in that section. So the lovely Tiffany will show the lucky winner, and we will get you. There it is. Congratulations, your subscription to the Legendary Crate. We love seeing you guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the panelists. Have a great Comic-Con.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.